Welcome to Insight Builder channel. 5 steps to integrate Python with Power BI. The why and how, part 1. Why integrate Python with Power BI? There are a couple of benefits. We can create pipeline for data import and data cleaning with ETL. ETL is extract, transform, and load. This entire process can be automated. We can perform advanced analytics with Python package. There are varieties of packages like pandas, matplotlib, and seaborn, which can help you in making excellent analysis and exploratory data work. You can fetch external data into Power BI through Python API because most of the external websites and applications have an API that links with Python through APIs. We can automate repetitive processes because once you transform something, and it could be an Excel sheet, it could be a data that comes from another department, you can ask them to give it in a particular format, and you can write the Python code that can automate and load the data whenever they update it. All these things are a couple of benefits that you enjoy when you work with Python in Power BI. There are a couple of challenges involved. Okay, when it comes to Python, you need to install the toolchain and you need to ensure that all the toolchain necessary is already available. You also need to ensure that you go with a Python that is at least 2 or 3 versions older. Meaning if it is Python 14 is a recent version, then you need to work with Python 11, 3.11 or 3.10. There is a reason for that. Whenever you are going to use the recent Python, then there is a probability that you will enter into major challenges when it comes to compiling the supporting packages like pandas and matplotlib. There is a lot of C++ code involved in pandas and NumPy and even C code, which requires a lot of additional compilation toolchains. Then that will become a problem. So to avoid all these challenges, it's always better to go with the older version. If it is the recent version is 3.14, then you need to go with at least 3.11 or 3.12. How to integrate Python in Power BI? So there are 2 ways. The 2 ways to integrate Python is to load data and to visualize data. So once you load the data, you can clean and reload the data for visualization, or you can load the data by doing the cleaning and reloading inside Python itself. So there are varieties of ways to do it. The knowledge of Python is required because the more you understand these the Python basics, the better you will be able to manage in Power BI. You need to install Python supporting packages, as I told you, and you need to test it locally by executing code in the command line. So these are all a couple of things that you need to understand before you dive into getting the things done with Python in Power BI. So the process is very simple. So what happens in case of Power BI is that it is you going to use the Python that is already installed on your machine, meaning on your computer the Python is installed and Power BI is going to use that, and it is going to execute the code that you're going to execute, the Python code that you're going to give it. How that is going to do, what are the settings that we have to make, and how to install and all those things, we will dive into it in a couple of minutes. We have to work on the loading part, we have to work on transformation, we have to ensure the script is returning a data frame, we have to open the query editor and load the script, and the data frame will be loaded in the data area. So this is the loading part. When it comes to visualizing data, the data visualization script directly works on the data that is present in the Power BI. Okay, so we need to create a Python script that reads that data. So this is little bit tricky. You have to understand that, and you have to also little bit understand Python also. And then you have to select the columns in Python script that will be given by the Power BI. So this is also something that you need to understand. I'll be explaining these things to you. The data frame will be loaded into the data area in the Power BI. So this process, it is actually a holistic process. Okay. What you're going to do is we are going to dive into the Python and Power BI integration right now. So you see that I already have one of the visualizations here, which is done through Plotly. It's one of the Python packages, and I'm using this just a very simple data that is available: month, region, and revenue. So these are the three things, and you can see that it is creating a simple line chart on with respect to the revenue and with respect to the region. It's a straightforward setup, right? And how are we going to do this? That's what we are going to see. But before that, we need to look into a couple of things. So first of all, we need to get access to Python, right? So just a minute. It's always better to search for Python 3.11 or 3.12 or whichever version you want. And then if you go into Python release, you will be able to get the downloads in this area. So I'm going to zoom in a bit so you guys can see it better. So this is the link, and you can take the 64-bit. Most probably if you're using Power BI, you are already having a 64-bit Windows. So go with 64-bit download and it will download. And after that, you need to install it. The moment you try to install it, what will happen is let me start the installation process for you, but to safeguard time, I'm going to show you what will happen. So this will actually install it and update it on your local machine. And if you go to programs and features, you will see that we have Python available. Just a minute. Yeah, you can see the Python launcher is available, and you can use this Python launcher to launch the Python that you want. Another one way is you can use the Microsoft apps, and you can search for Python here, and that will provide you the options available. So here you can see I have installed it through App Store, and in App Store you will see that it actually suggests you to go with the top level Python that is present is actually 3.11, because that has been tested by a lot of people. Okay, so that comes to the top, and yeah, there is 3.13 also, but 3.14 you will not find it that easily, right? So this actually safeguards you. So when you are going to go and install it from the internet, from the browser Python website, what will happen is you will be given the recent version. So if we go to Python, if we go to downloads, and here you will be given the recent version, pre-release version. If you make this mistake, if you go to pre-release, then you will face a lot of challenges. So ensure that you are downloading the older version. Even 3.13 is actually new. Just to avoid any kind of challenges, download 2 versions older. This is very, very crucial, right? So once you download, once you installed, what will happen is if you install it through Python, the application store in Microsoft, you need to go to command prompt, and you need to know where is Python present. So you have to execute where Python. This will show you where the Python is available. So let me change this a bit so you guys can see it better. Okay, I think that should be okay. Yeah, so this is the path where Python is stored, and you can see this Windows apps. So this is where the python.exe is available, and whenever you are going to do a pip install on pandas, so this is the applications packages that you need to install: pandas, matplotlib. So these things I will be sharing in the description, so don't worry about that. Plotly, Kaleido, and seaborn. You can actually install various other libraries to work with Python, so nothing is going to stop you from doing that. And whatever you are installing here, so you can see that it is already installed in my case, so it's saying it's already existing. And if you do a pip freeze on pip is another one command that you need to also understand. So pip freeze will tell me what are the various packages that is available in my Python installation. Fine. So this is how the Python has to be installed, and this is how you have to get the packages installed in Python, and this is something not related with Power BI. Okay, this is completely working with Python. Now what we are going to do is we are going to see how to execute Python code first. So in order to execute Python code, you have to have the Python file. So in my case, I have a simple Python file. Just a minute. Just give me a second. The code that I'm going to ingest the data into Power BI and do the plotting with Power BI is present in the GitHub repo. This link will be shared with you guys. Okay, and this is the code that I'm going to use. This is a very simple code that is used here, and you can see I have actually going to execute this also. So I will show you by executing this in Windows so that you will understand what's happening, and then we will see how to work with this. Okay, so I'm going to take this code. I'm just going to copy this, and I'm going to go into Windows, and I'm going to create a new file. Right, I'm going to create a new text document, and I'm going to say ingest data. I can actually execute the entire process one by one by just give me a second. I am going to change something so that it will be easier for me to what I'm doing is I am actually trying to change the extensions of the file icon. So I'm saying here, if you see hide extensions, you have to remove this, apply. Okay, so you can see that here here if you see there is py.txt, so this is wrong. So I need to change it to, just a minute, show more options, change it to just py. So that will become a Python script. And yes, so now it is a Python script. What I can do is I can execute this Python script. And you can see that I have a Python script available here, ingest data.py. So if I execute this with Python ingest data, so you will see that there is nothing getting, no output is coming. That is because I have not given a way to make it output. So let us actually go to the notepad, and I will go with always. Just give it a second. Okay, I have not pasted anything, so that's why. Fine. So here, if you see, I have not actually done the pasting, so that's why it did not work. Sorry about that. You need to print this head. So you can click this, and now if you execute, you will see that it takes up and it shows this data. Now the same data is going to get loaded into the data frame. Apart from that, when you execute this code, you will see that it is creating a new CSV file. You see this? This CSV file is also something that we have asked to create here. But when you are going to ask Power BI to execute this code to load the data, we have to just stop with this. You don't need these two commands to be executed, because Power BI is going to just take this data frame. I'm not diving into pandas background information. Okay, there are lots of videos for that, but keep this in mind that it has to have the ingesting script must have a data frame, and that data frame will be read by Power BI. Okay, so I'm going to copy this right now. So I first copied it from GitHub repo to this ingest underscore data.py to show you how the code executes. Okay, that is only to show you how Python code executes, to test it. Now we are going to actually load the data. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new blank report, and in the new blank report I'm going to load the data, and then I will be showing you how to work with the data. So before we go into loading the data, we'll go to options. We have to go to the options, and we have to ensure that the Python scripting is properly enabled. So in my case, I have taken other, and I have given the path of the Python location. This is the location that I showed you here. If you remember, before I started, I showed you here, right? This is the same location, and I'm not giving python.exe. You see that I just give the path of the folder. Right, that's what I've given. And another one thing that I realized is when I was trying to execute the just a minute, there is a way to set the here if you see the maximum memory used for simultaneous evaluation, so this has to be, the value has to be lower. So if you come here, they are recommending a value 368. So you need to use that value or below that value. If this is higher, then you will not be able to modify this Python scripting location. So this was one of the problems I was facing. Okay, so ensure that if you are facing any problem in setting this path, okay, if you are facing a problem in setting this path, then you need to check the data load process and you need to reduce this number, and then it actually gets properly set. If it is not set, then it will not work. Okay, I'm going to say okay, I'm going to say get. Now I'm going to get the data. This is a new report. I'm going to get the data and I'm going to go to more, and here you'll see that I have to type Python, and you'll see the Python script comes up. You can say connect, and the moment I say connect, it will actually open the script area. Now again, this is where we paste it. Whatever we took from the notepad, okay, up to the data frame, we have to paste it in script area. Right, and once you do that, you have to just click OK. What happens is it executes this and then it reads the data frame and then it loads the data frame. You see this here? So it loads this data frame. This name df is coming from this df. This is how it is linked. You need to understand how the data is flowing. That's very, very important. So you see the entire data here, and I can say load, and once I load it here, it will come into the data area. You can see the loading process is happening, the model is updated, and the df data is here. That's it. So we have seen now one of the crucial parts, right? We have seen how the loading process works. So in the loading process, I can transform the data inside Python using pandas and various other applications and packages available. I can ensure the script is returning a data frame. I open the query editor in PowerBI to load the script or get data feature in PowerBI and load the script, and the data frame will be loaded into the data area. So this part is complete, right? Now the PowerBI is actually having the data inside it. So if you go back, PowerBI has the data inside it. Now we need to visualize it, correct? That's why you are having PowerBI, correct? In order to visualize, if you see under the visualizations, there are various visuals, and here is one of the visuals called Python visual. So if you click that, it will ask you to enable the visual scripts. So first of all, click on enable and nothing will happen. Okay, this is where some confusion starts. So what to do next? So the most important thing that you need to understand here is that you need to select. If you go here, you need to select this. The moment you select it, this area will change. And if you zoom in here, you will see that it is actually having a pandas.data frame month. Right? So if you select region, the region will add up. If you select revenue, the revenue will add up. You see this point updating, and this is the data set that we are going to work with. Okay, and let me actually execute the next step. So once I have this data set with me, I can use Python packages to make the visuals appear here. So how I am going to do that? Very simple. Let us go back to the GitHub repo, and in the GitHub repo you will see plotly_line. So this is the line chart that I am going to use for creating the visual, right? And here I have a lot of data. Okay, here I have the actual data also available, and if you see, I am creating the file, and then I am creating the entire line chart. But in case of PowerBI, we don't need to do all these things. I am having this here because I can show you what happens first. Okay, so before I go into PowerBI and start the visualization, I'm going to create a new notepad, right? And I'm going to show you how this works. Okay, let us save this. So the moment I try to save it, it will actually ask me to save it. So I can say visual. Just a minute. Visual line graph.py. I need to save it as Python script. That's very important, or else it will create a problem when you're trying to load the Python script. So now I am going to say dir again. You'll see that I have a new Python script here. correct? And I'm going to say Python visual line graph, and once I execute this will go through the process and it will give me an HTML document. Okay, it has completed it, and if I do a dir, you'll see there's an HTML document, right? I need to open that HTML document. Okay, and in that only you will see the visual. Okay, so in order to open the HTML document, let me go back and let me open it. So you'll see that I have the graph coming out like this. So this graph has been created with help of PowerBI. With help of Python and Plotly. The same graph we are going to create it inside PowerBI with help of again Python and Plotly. But the graph output will come inside PowerBI. The same output that has come here on the HTML page will come inside PowerBI. So like this you can create it in various ways. You can have the output come as a picture, you can have it as HTML, you can extract the picture data and store it elsewhere. So a lot of things you can do. The idea here is that you need to understand what is input and what is output. Now let us go back. So I have shown you how the code works. Now how we have to work with the code inside Power BI. That's important. In order to work inside Power BI, you need to only start from here. So you don't need any of these things. Okay, you don't need any of these things. So let me remove this. Okay, you need to start from this area. And you need to copy this. And you don't need the save chart also. So we are going to do something different here. So we are going to display the chart. So let me copy that. Let me go to Power BI and let me paste it here. Okay, the moment you paste it here, the entire script will come in. First thing you need to do is you need to make df is equal to dataset dot reset index. Why this is being done is the dataset that is provided by pandas by Power BI has to be will contain an additional index which we don't want. So we need to tell the Python to first of all reset the index on the dataset. So this is the dataset that is coming from here, right? And I need to assign the properly resetted dataset to the variable called df. So this df is what I am going to use it for making the picture. Rest of the things you don't need to change. Now scroll down and at the end you will have this output path. So change this output path to figure.png. So we want the output to be a PNG file, and this PNG file is what we are going to use to show the data here. So what we are going to do is write image. So instead of write HTML, we are going to use figure.writeImage, and once you execute this figure, the figure will be written and that figure will be used to show the output on the Power BI. The Power BI itself does not have support for Plotly. Power BI also does not have support for matplotlib or any of the other applications as such. What Power BI does is it actually takes the output of these packages, it converts it into kind of a picture, and then it renders it. This is one thing that I realized after doing some back and forth between varieties of packages in Python, and then I realized it. So let me run this. So you need to click here to run it. So sometimes you will actually get these kinds of errors. So if you click on details, you will see that the name error go is not defined. So what does this mean? What this means is that I'm using a word called go here, but Python doesn't know what is that go means. So to find that out, you need to go back to the script. So if you go to the top of the script, you will see that there is this importing. This importation you have to do. So you have to copy this, you have to go back and you have to paste it after the green starting points. So if you enter this here, and after this if you click on this run icon, it will run and it will take a moment and you'll see that it is creating the output. Neat, right? So yeah, another thing that I wanted you to remember is that in case of Python, you have to have separate filtering options inside the code. But in case of Power BI, the data itself is going to be filtered using the filters here. Okay, so that means the data that is coming here, the data set that is coming here is already filtered by Power BI. So the code below, the Python code below, should consider the filtered data. You should not do any filtering in the Python. Avoid that filtering. Okay, like here I have done a kind of a filtering here. This is a kind of filtering that I have done for region data, but for a different reason. Okay, but you don't need to do this if you are going to use Power BI. Okay, keep this in mind and accordingly work with Python. You might know Python, but there is that interface that is happening between the Power BI and Python. That understanding has to come properly, right? So for that one I am telling, the data that is coming from Power BI into this area, into this green area, is already filtered and processed by the Power BI backend. You don't need to again filter it. And second thing is, only these columns that you see here will be available for the code below. None of the other columns will be available. Even though you might have other columns here, if you have not selected this, it will not be available here and it will not be available to the code below in the Python. Right. So I believe that this actually has given you a good, basics on how Python is used in Power BI for loading the data and visualizing the data. And by now you must have got that idea that if I have a complex Excel, or if I have a very different kind of a data that is coming from an API or coming from a database, and if I have to create a visualization, all you need to do is take that visualization data, pass it through the loading data with Python code, load the data into Power BI data interface, create a Python script, and then visualize the data. So there is going to be 2 Python scripts, one for loading and one for visualization. There are a couple of other ways that I have come across that you can use Python for doing some editing inside Power Query also, but that I will leave it for the other day. So by now you must have got a very good understanding of how Python integrates with Power BI, what you need to do to get the Python installed in your Windows system, and how will you connect that Python with Power BI. We saw that also. We also discussed on the challenges that you might face in case if you are working with Python very recent version. So you will face a lot of errors. So go for older version. That's very important. And then we also spoke about why to integrate Python. So I believe that this video has given you a very good starting point on the why and how of Python with Power BI. And this is part 1. Stay tuned for part 2. With that said, I would like to leave this video with 4 words, that is practice, 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 practice. See you guys.